The Stars Tennis Balls by Stephen Fry. It all began sometime in the last century, in an age when lovers wrote letters to each other sealed up in envelopes. Sometimes they used colored inks to show their love, or they perfumed their writing paper with scent. 41 Plough Lane, Hampstead, London, NW3, Monday, June 2nd, 1980. Darling Ned, I'm sorry about the smell. I hope you've opened this somewhere private, all on your own. You'll get teased to distraction otherwise. It's called Rive Gauche, so I'm feeling like Simone de Beauvoir, and I hope you're feeling like Jean-Paul Sartre. Actually, I hope you aren't because I think he was pretty horrid to her. I'm writing this upstairs after a row with Pete and Hillary. Ha ha ha. Pete and Hillary, Pete and Hillary, Pete and Hillary. You hate it when I call them that, don't you? I love you so much. If you saw my diary, you'd die. I wrote a whole 2 pages this morning. I drew up a list of everything that's wonderful and glorious about you, and one day when we're together forever, I might let you look at it and you'll die again. I wrote that you're old-fashioned. 1. The first time we met, you stood up when I entered the room, which was sweet, but it was the Hard Rock Cafe, and I was coming out of the kitchen to take your order. 2. Every time I refer to my mom and dad as Peter and Hillary, you go pink and tighten your lips. 3. When you first talked to Pete and, alright, I'll let you off, when you first talked to mom and dad, you let them go on and on about private education and private health and how terrible it was and how evil the government is, and you never said a word. About your dad being a Tory MP, I mean, you talked beautifully about the weather and incomprehensibly about cricket, but you never let on. That's what the road today was about, in fact. Your dad was on Weekend World at lunchtime. You probably saw him. I love you, by the way. God, I love you so much. Where do they find them? Barked Pete, stabbing a finger at the television. Where do they find them? Find who? I said coldly, gearing up for a fight. Whom? Said Hillary. These tweed-jacketed throwbacks, said Pete. Look at the old fart. What right has he got to talk about the miners? He wouldn't recognize a lump of coal if it fell into his bowl of brown Windsor soup. You remember the boy I brought home last week? I said with what I'm pretty sure any observer would call icy calm. Job security, he says. Peter yelled at the screen. When have you ever had to worry about job security, Mr. Eaton, Oxford and the guards? Then he turned to me. What boy? When? He always does that when you ask him a question, says something else first, completely off the subject, and then answers your question with one or more of his own. Drives me mad. So do you, darling Neddy, but mad with deepest love. If you were to say to my father, Pete, what year was the Battle of Hastings? He'd say, they're cutting back on unemployment benefit. In real terms, it's gone down by 5% in just 2 years. 5%. Bastard. Hastings? Why do you want to know? Why Hastings? Hastings was nothing but a clash between warlords and robber barons. The only battle worth knowing about is the battle between... And he'd be off. He knows it drives me mad. I think it probably drives Hillary mad too. Anyway, I persevered. The boy I brought home, I said, his name was Ned. You remember him perfectly well. It was his half-term. He came into the Hard Rock 2 weeks ago. The Sloane Ranger, the cricket jumper, what about him? He is not a Sloane Ranger. Looked like one to me. Didn't he look like a Sloane Ranger to you, Hills? He was certainly very polite, Hillary said. Exactly. Peter returned to the bloody TV where there was a shot of your dad trying to address a group of Yorkshire miners, which I have to admit was quite funny. Look at that! First time the old fascist has ever been north of Watford in his life, I guarantee you. Except when he's passing through on his way to Scotland to murder grouse. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Never mind Watford, when did you last go north of Hampstead? I said. Well, shouted Which was fair, I think, because he was driving me mad and he can be such a hypocrite sometimes. Hillary went all, "Don't you talk to your father like that-ish," and then got back to her article. She's doing a new column now for Spare Rib and gets ratty very easily. You seem to have forgot You seem to have forgotten that I took my doctorate at Sheffield University, Pete said, as if that qualified him for the Northerner of the Decade award. Never mind that, I went on. The point is Ned just happens to be that man's son, and I pointed at the screen with a very exultant finger. Unfortunately, the man on camera just at that moment was the presenter. Pete turned to me with a look of awe. "That boy is Brian Walden's son?" he said hoarsely. "You're going out with Brian Walden's son?" It seems that Brian Walden, the presenter, used to be a Labour MP. For one moment, Pete had this picture of me stepping out with socialist royalty. I could see his brain rapidly trying to calculate the chances of his worming his way into Brian Walden's confidence, father-in-law to father-in-law, wangling in seat in the next election and progressing triumphantly from the dull grind of the Inner London Education Authority to the thrill and glamour of the House of Commons and national fame. Peter Fendeman, maverick, firebrand, and hero of the workers, I watched the whole fantasy pass through his greedy eyes. Disgusting. "Not him," I said. "Him." Your father had appeared back on screen again, now striding towards the door of number 10 with papers tucked under his arm. "I love you, Ned. I love you more than the tides love the moon, more than Mickey loves Minnie and Pooh loves honey. I love your big dark eyes and your sweet round bum. I love your mess of hair and your very red lips. They are very red, in fact. I bet you didn't know that. Very few people have lips that really are red in the way that poets write about red. Yours are the reddest red, a redder red than ever I read of. And I want them all over me right now, but oh, no matter how red your lips, how round your bum, how big your eyes, it's you that I love. When I saw you standing there at table 16, smiling at me, it was as if you were entirely without a body at all. I had come out of the kitchen in a foul mood, and there, shining in front of me, I saw this soul, this Ned, this you, a naked soul smiling at me like the sun, and I knew I would die if I didn't spend the rest of my life with it. But still, how I wish this afternoon that your father were a union leader, a teacher in a comprehensive school, the editor of the Morning Star, Brian Walden himself, anything but Charles Madstone, war hero, retired brigadier of the Guards, ex-colonial administrator. Most of all, how I wish he was anything but a cabinet minister in a conservative government. That's not right, though, is it? You wouldn't be you, then, would you? When Pete and Hillary both got it, they stared from me to the screen and back again. Hillary even looked at the chair you sat in the day you came around, glared at the thing as if she wanted it disinfected and burned. "Oh, Portia," she said in what they used to call tragic accents. Pete, of course, after going as red as Lenin, swallowed his rage and his baffled pride and began to talk to me solemnly. He understood my adolescent revolt against everything I had been brought up to cherish and believe. No, more than that, he respected it. Do you know, in a kind of way, I'm proud of you, Porsche. Proud of that fighting spirit. You're pushing against authority, and isn't that what I've always taught you to do?" "What?" I screeched. I have to be honest, there's no other word. It was definitely a screech. He spread his hands and raised his shoulders with an infernal smugness that will haunt me till the day I die. "Okay, you've dated the upper-class tweet of the year, and that's got your dad's attention. You've got Pete listening. Let's talk, yeah? I arose calmly, left the room, and went upstairs for a think. Well, that's what I should have done, but I didn't. In fact, I absolutely yelled at him. "F you, Pete! I hate you! You're pathetic! And you know what else? You're a snob! You're a hideous, contemptible snob!" Then I stamped out of the room, slammed the door, and ran upstairs for a cry. The president of the Immortals, in a Shillan phrase, had finished his sport with Portia. Pooh, and more pooh. Anyway, at least they know now. Have you told your parents? I suppose they'll hit the roof as well. their beloved son ensnared by the daughter of Jewish left-wing intellectuals. If you can call a part-time history lecturer at Northeast London Polytechnic an intellectual, which in my book you can. It wouldn't be love without opposition, would it? I mean, if Juliet's dad had fallen on Romeo's neck and said, I'm not losing a daughter, I'm gaining a son, and Romeo's mom had beamed, Welcome to the Montag family, Juliet, my precious, it would be a pretty short play. Anyway, a couple of hours after this distressing scene, Pete knocked on my door with a cup of tea. Precision, Portia, precision, he knocked on my door with his knuckles, but you know what I mean. I thought he was going to give me grief, but in fact, well, no, in fact, he did give me grief. That is exactly and literally what he gave me. He had just had a phone call from America. Apparently, Pete's brother, my Uncle Leo, had a heart attack in New York last night and was dead by the time an ambulance arrived. Too green. Uncle Leo's wife, Rose, died of ovarian cancer in January, and now he's gone too. He was 48. 48 and dead from a heart attack. So my poor cousin Gordon is coming over to England to stay with us. He was the one who had to call the ambulance and everything. Imagine seeing your own father die in front of you. He's the only child too. He must be in a terrible state. Poor thing. I hope he'll like it with us. I think he was brought up quite orthodox, so what he'll make of family life here, I can't imagine. Our idea of kosher is a bacon bagel. I've never met him. I've always pictured him as having a black beard, which is insane, of course, since he's about our age. 17 going on 18, that kind of thing. The result of the day is that peace has broken out in the Fendeman home, and next week I shall have a brother to talk to. I'll be able to talk about you, which, oh, Neddy mine, is more than you ever do. Won a match, played pretty well, I think, revising hard, thinking about you a great deal. I quote the interesting bits. I know you're busy with exams, but then so am I. Don't worry, any letter that comes from you gives me a fever. I look at the writing and imagine your hand moving over the paper, which is enough to make me wriggle like a lovesick eel. I picture your hair flopping down as you write, which is enough to make me writhe and froth I'll come back to you on that one. I think of your legs under the table and a million trillion cells sparkle and fizz inside me. The way you cross makes me breathless. I hold the back of my envelope to my lips and think of you licking it, and my head swims. I'm a dotty, dippy, dozy, dreadful, delirious romantic, and I love you to heaven. But I wish you weren't going back to your school next term. Leave and be free like the rest of us. You don't have to go to Oxford, do you? I wouldn't go to any university that made me stay on through the winter term after I'd already done all my A-levels and all my friends had left, just to sit some special entrance paper. How pompous can you get? Why can't they behave like a normal university? Come with me to Bristol. We'll have a much better time. I shan't bully you about it though. You must do whatever you want to do. I love you, I love you, I love you. I've just had a thought. Suppose your history of art teacher had taken your class on a trip to the Royal Academy that Saturday. Suppose he had taken you to the Tate or the National Gallery instead. You wouldn't have been in Piccadilly, and you wouldn't have gone to the Hard Rock Cafe for lunch, and I wouldn't be the luckiest, happiest, most dementedly in love girl in the world. The world is very, consults the Thomas Hardy textbook that she's supposed to be studying. The world is very contingent. So there, I'm kissing the air around me. Love and love and love and love and love. Your Portia X. Only one X because a quintillion wouldn't be anything like enough. 7th June 1980. My darling Portia, thank you for a wonderful letter. After your completely justified criticism of my terrible style of letter writing, this is going to be completely tricky. It just seems to gush out of you like a geyser, spelling, and I'm not too hot at that kind of thing. Also, your handwriting is completely perfect, like everything else about you, of course, and mine is completely illegible. I thought of responding to your little extra, which was fantastic, by the way, by spraying this envelope with eau de cologne or aftershave, but I haven't got any. I don't suppose the linseed oil I use for my cricket bat would entice you. Thought not. I'm so sorry you had a row with your family. Would it help at all if you were to tell Peter, there I said it, that I am completely poor? We never go abroad for holidays. It's all my father can do to send me here. And I know that it doesn't sound very left wing or anything, but he spends all the rest on traveling between London and his constituency and trying to stop our house from falling down. If I had any brothers or sisters, I'd probably, by the way, where on earth did you get probably from? Have to wear their hand-me-downs. As it is, I wear his. I'm the only boy in the school who goes around in cavalry twills and old hacking jackets on days when we don't have to wear uniform. I even wear his old border, which is almost orange with age, and the edge of the brim is chipped. When my mom was alive, she generally used to darn socks for me like some Victorian. So my father may be a fascist, which I honestly don't think he is, but he's a completely poor one. Also, I told him that I met a girl in London, and he was very pleased. He didn't hit the roof at all when I said you had a Saturday job from school working as a waitress at a hamburger restaurant. In fact, he said it sounded like you had some initiative. And as for the Jewish thing, he was very interested and wondered if your family were refugees from Hitler. He had something to do with the war crimes in Nuremberg. And oh, anyway, I'm not trying to say my father is better than yours. I thought your parents were really nice actually. It's just that you don't have to worry about him disapproving or anything. He can't wait to meet you, and I can't wait for you to meet him. Most people assume he's my grandfather because he's older than most parents, if you know what I mean. He is a very good man, I think, but I know I'm completely biased. Anyway, he's all I have. My mother died when I was born. Didn't I tell you before? My fault, really. I was her first one, and she was nearly 50. What terrible news about your uncle in America. I'm so sorry. I hope Gordon turns out to be a nice bloke. It'll be great for you to have a brother at last. All my cousins are completely scary. I just cannot wait for term to end. Thank God the last exam is over. I've been revising so hard that my head is bleeding, but I still don't think I've done as well as I need to. Boring school gossip. Number 1, I've been made head boy. Ta-da! We call it captain of school, actually. Just for next term, but I'll be too busy revising for Oxford entrance for it to mean much. More on that subject in a bit. Anyway, by the time you get to my age, all the glamour goes out of authority. It just becomes hard work and endless meetings with the headmaster and school monitors. We call prefects monitors here. Don't ask me why. Number 2, the sailing club is going to the west coast of Scotland this August. The master in charge has invited me along. For 2 weeks, the very same 2 weeks you and your family are going to Italy. So it's the same 2 weeks we would have been away from each other anyway. For the rest of the time, I'll be staying in my father's flat in Victoria, and you'll be there with me as much as possible, I hope. Are you going to get a job at the Hard Rock again? Anyway, Oxford. I can't bear either that I've got to come back here in September while you'll be as free as a bird. For 2 pence I'd forget the whole thing and apply to Bristol and be with you. It's not that I'm really so stuck on Oxford, it's just that I know it would break my father's heart if I didn't go. His great-great-grandfather was at St. Mark's and every Madstone since. There's even a quad named after us. Think that would make it easier for me to get in, but actually it doesn't work like that anymore. I'll actually have to do better in my entrance exam than virtually anyone just to prove that I've got in on merit, not on family name and connections. It would mean so much to him. I hope that doesn't sound chronically pathetic. I'm his only son, and I just know how much he'd love coming to visit me and walking around the colleges and pointing out his old haunts and so on. I wish you could come and visit me here. Suppose next term I smuggle you in as a new boy. All you've got to do is squeak and look pretty, and you're very good at that. No, not pretty, you're beautiful, of course. The most beautiful thing I've ever seen or ever will see. You're very good at squeaking though. I love your letters. I still can't believe all this is true. Has it really happened to us? Other boys here have girlfriends too, but I'm certain it's not the same for them. They show their letters around and make a great show of drooling publicly over them. That must be a sign that it's really no more than a joke to them. And it isn't a joke for us, is it? You mentioned that strange thing about fate and how it was that our school group was at the Royal Academy and how, if we hadn't been, we probably wouldn't have gone into the Hard Rock Cafe. That is such a completely weird thought. But then, when you came up to our table there, where I think 7 of us, and why was it you looked at twice at me? Apart from the fact that I'm such a moron that I was standing up. I really hate to disillusion you on that, by the way, but it wasn't politeness that made me stand up. I saw you, and I stood up. It was like a sort of instinct. This must sound completely crazy. It was as if I had known you forever. What's more, if I think about it, I could swear that I knew you were going to come out of that swing door. I had been feeling funny all day. Feeling different, if you know what I mean. And by the time we got into the restaurant after sweating around the gallery for 2 hours and walking half a mile down Piccadilly, I just knew something was going to happen to me. And when you started coming towards us, you patted the front of your apron and checked your ear for a pencil in the funniest way. I can remember every detail of it. I just leaped to my feet. I nearly shouted out, "At last!" And then you looked up into my eyes and we smiled at each other, and that was it. But you must have noticed the other boys there, most of them surely taller and better looking than me. Ashley Barson Garland was there, who's 20 times funnier and 20 times brainier. That reminds me, I did something completely awful this morning in biology. It's a bit complicated to describe and I feel awful about it. It's not something for you to worry about, but it was odd. I read Barson Garland's diary, part of it. I've never done anything like that before, and I just don't know what came over me. I'll tell you all about it when we meet. When we meet. When we meet. When we meet. I just cannot stop thinking about you. All kinds of wicked things start happening to me. Before I was born, my father was a district commissioner in the Sudan. I remember him telling me once that young men arriving from Britain used to go about in iron khaki shorts, and sometimes, if they happened across one of the beautiful Nubian women who went around bare-topped, or often entirely bare, they would have to turn and face the wall or just sit down on the ground there and then, where they were, to cover the fact, as my father puts it, that they had become a little excited downstairs. Well, just imagining you reading this letter, just knowing that these words will soon be in your eyes, that gets me a little excited downstairs, a lot excited downstairs. So when I say that I'm thinking of you and thinking hard, you'll know what I mean. Well, I've gone and made myself blush now. I adore you so much that I hardly know what to do with myself except laugh. I love you to the power of everything plus 1. Ned X. Ned never knew why he had done such a sly and terrible thing. Perhaps it was fate. Perhaps it was the devil, in whom he believed sincerely. He had slipped the book from Ashley Barson Garland's bag, dropped it onto his knees, and opened the first page before he was even aware of what he was doing. His right hand lay on the desk and pretended every now and then to slide backwards and forwards through advanced cell biology. Lowering his eyes to his lap, he began to read. It was a diary. He did not know what else he had imagined it might be. It looked at least 4 years old. He believed that it was its age that had first attracted him to it, when he had seen it peeping from the bag. He had seen Ashley carry this book with him everywhere, and that had intrigued him. Nonetheless, it was very strange that he should have done such a thing. Ned did not like to think of himself as the kind of person who was interested in other people's diaries. It was difficult to read, not the handwriting, which was very small, but clear and strong. Barson Garland's style was, how should one put it, opaque? Yes, that was an intellectual's word. The style was opaque. With each line that Ned absorbed, the drowsy buzz of the classroom fell further and further away into the background, until he was entirely alone with the words and a vein that throbbed quick and guilty in his neck. 3rd May of 1978, Deedsbury. Firstly, it has to be the accent. If you get that right, you're close to them. You're halfway there. Not just the accent, mind, the whole delivery. Note the way the voice comes out of the mouth, Note 2, the mouth's limited aperture, the line of the lips, the angle of the head, the dipping of the head, the tilting of the head, the movement of the hands, not arms, they are not Italians after all, and the direction of gaze. Remember how there used to come a hot buzz of blood to your face on the bus every time you heard your name spoken by them? You believed for one hard jump of a moment as they repeated and repeated your name that they were talking about you. You truly believed that inexplicably they must know you. They had recognized you as one of their own, displaced by some tragic turn of fate. The very first time on the bus, do you remember? They kept mentioning your name. Maybe you were going to be friends. How excited you were. They saw it in you, the thing you have. They spotted it. That indefinable quality of difference. Then you tweaked. It wasn't you they were talking about. They had no idea you existed. Theirs was another Ashley together, an amusing Ashley. That's a funny Ashley. Ashley, that's a real hoot. Despite the initial bump of disappointment that had jolted you like an electric shock when you realized it wasn't you they were talking about, it still gave you a little glow of pride and connection. Made you walk with a bit of a swing for a day or so, didn't it? Maybe your name, the name you hated so much, the name that shamed you, that you had believed to be so middle class, maybe if one of them shared it with you, maybe it was an alright name after all. Could it be that Ashley was in fact upper middle class, or even, you never know, aristocratic? Which one of them was Ashley though? It was absurd, but you caught the name bandied so often that for a shining day or two you wondered whether they could all be Ashleys. Then you considered the possibility that Ashley might be a general name they used for friend, their counterpart, or of the ugly mate that you heard every day in your concrete playground, just streets away from their stone quadrangle. But then you tweaked again. There was no Ashley. Ashley did not exist. There was only an actually. That's so funny, actually. Actually, that's a real hoot. Can you actually, Ashley, have ever really believed that they might have been talking about you? Did you seriously think that their lazy glances might actually, Ashley, have so much as taken you in? Sometimes your face may have been in the way of the arc of their gaze, but could you have truly believed that your identity, or even your face, ever actually, Ashley, registered? Yet they registered on you. Oh, how they registered! You looked at their skin and their hair and wondered how it could be so different from our skin and hair, from ordinary people's skin and hair. Was it a genetic gift? You noted the signature patch of flush on their cheeks, a hot scarlet, brighter by far than the dusty crimson bruise that stained the cheeks of the boys at your school. You noted, too, on some such pallor and translucence of complexion that you wondered if it might be their diet, or the diets of their mothers while they still swam in the womb. What burned into your mind most deeply of all, of course, was the flag of the blessed, their flag, the flop, the flopping fringe, the fringe that flopped, the flop fringe flag, and how it made you ache. What a great hole grew inside you when you gazed upon the flag, like a Frenchman far from home catching a whiff of gallows, like an Englishman lost in Asia to whose ears there suddenly floats the opening music of The Archers, because always, deep down, you did feel that their flag was really your flag too, if it weren't for the terrible mistake, and the hole that grew in you, the great ache you felt was not envy or covetousness. Actually, Ashley, it was loss. It was exile. You had been banished from your own, all on account of the terrible mistake, and you only ever shared a bus with them, what, 5 times? 6 at most? You watched them climbing aboard and swinging themselves to the back seat. Sometimes a hand would push down on your head rest, and the proximity of that hand to your head would send you dizzy, and you would try to eat the air around you. So deep was your hunger for what they were, for what they had, breaking rules, probably, skipping into London out of school uniform, the beautiful, the ridiculous uniform of tailcoats and striped trousers discarded in favor of sweaters and cords, the flag flying, free to flop without constriction from boaters and top hats. On the last day, the day before the move north, You retrieved the boulder from under the seat, didn't you? He didn't realize at first that he had come onto the bus wearing it. They teased him and laughing he had skimmed it down towards the driver in mock self-disgust. You nearly opened your mouth to tell him it was lodged under the seat in front of you as he passed on his way out, but he kept silent, ashamed of your North London vowels. You retrieved the boulder and you kept it, a shallow straw hat with a ribbon of blue, and afterwards you wore it, didn't you? In your bedroom. You're wearing it now, aren't you? You cheap, you creepy, you sad, and it doesn't work, does it? Your hair is too coarse to flop like a wild Tay salmoner's watch of Savile Row suiting. Your hair bristles like a bog brush, like a suburban doormat. In fact, you aren't wearing JSG Etheridge's boater. Note the 3 initials, class. JSG Etheridge's boater, it just happens to be on your head. Just as this diary is on the table and this table is on the floor. The floor isn't wearing the table isn't wearing the diary. There's a gulf, a great gaping gulf of difference, and it is this gulf that's why so often you jerk off into this straw hat, isn't it? Isn't it, you miserable lump of nothing? Okay, that's it for now. I'm on page 22. So on to the next live. I will continue with this book. Thank you.